The party lights burned too bright, the air too heavy with perfume and pride. Daniel Smith adjusted his cufflinks as another photographer shouted his name. The ballroom of the Dorchester shimmered with glass chandeliers and gossip. He smiled for the cameras the way he'd been trained to, polite, charming, detached. Inside, his chest felt like a ticking clock. His mother's voice cut through the crowd. "Daniel, they're waiting for you." Margaret Smith, silver hair, diamond necklace, posture like a ruler, moved toward him with the calm of a woman who owned the room. "Tonight is about your future," she said quietly, her hand resting on his arm like a command. "My future or yours?" he asked. She didn't flinch. "Don't start." Daniel's gaze drifted across the hall, where Catherine Knight stood at the center of attention, elegant, flawless, smiling like she'd practiced in a mirror. Cameras loved her, the investors adored her, and Daniel tolerated her. The engagement dinner wasn't supposed to feel like a funeral, yet as his mother raised her glass and the pianist played something cheerful, Daniel's stomach tightened. The world he'd built was gold-plated but hollow inside. He glanced toward the serving staff at the far end of the room. That was when he saw her, a woman balancing a tray of champagne flutes moving carefully between clusters of wealthy guests. Her dark hair was pulled into a simple knot. No makeup, no jewelry, just focus. She didn't belong here, and somehow that made her the only real person in the room. Their eyes met for half a second. She looked away quickly. Margaret's voice echoed through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to celebrate the upcoming union of our beloved son Daniel and the lovely Catherine Knight." Applause followed. Catherine turned, flashing a smile meant for the papers. Daniel stood frozen. "Say something," his mother whispered through clenched teeth. He didn't move. The lights, the applause, the stares, everything pressed in. Catherine reached for his hand, and something in him snapped. He stepped back, shaking his head. "I can't do this." Gasps rippled through the hall. Catherine blinked, still holding her perfect smile. "What are you doing?" Daniel turned, and there she was again, the housekeeper, now near the champagne table. Her name tag read Shirley Adams. She looked startled, unsure whether to run or stay. Before his mind could catch up with his heart, Daniel walked toward her. The crowd fell silent. Every camera turned. Shirley froze as he stopped in front of her, his pulse pounding. "Sir?" she began softly. Daniel leaned in, placed his hand gently on her cheek, and kissed her. The room erupted. Gasps, shutters clicking. Someone shouted his name. Catherine's voice broke through, shrill and furious. "Are you out of your mind?" Daniel stepped back. Shirley's tray clattered to the floor, glass breaking, champagne pooling like spilled truth. She stared at him, breathless, shocked. Margaret's face drained of color. "Daniel! I'm done pretending," he said quietly. Then to Shirley, "I'm sorry." Security moved in, whispers spread like wildfire, and the headlines wrote themselves before the night even ended. Later, as the guests filed out in awkward silence, Daniel found himself in his study, jacket gone, tie loose, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters, investors, his mother. When the door opened, he didn't turn. "If it's about the engagement, don't bother. It's dead." "It's not dead," came his mother's cold reply. "You just killed it." She stepped closer, fury simmering beneath her calm tone. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The Knights will withdraw the merger. Every newspaper in London is calling you unstable." "Good," Daniel said flatly. "Maybe they'll stop trying to own me." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And who was that girl?" "She works for the agency, new housekeeper. Her name's Shirley." "Fire her immediately." He looked up sharply. "No. Daniel, she had nothing to do with it. I dragged her into it. Leave her out of this." Margaret's expression softened for a brief moment, disappointment replacing anger. "You've always had a talent for ruining what's good for you." She left, the click of her heels echoing like a warning. Daniel exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. The night had collapsed, and yet for the first time, he felt something like freedom. At the same time, in a small rented flat on the outskirts of London, Shirley sat on the edge of her bed, still in her work uniform. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the news on her phone. Every headline carried her face beside his. "Mystery woman kisses billionaire heir at engagement dinner." "Who is the housekeeper that broke London's perfect couple?" Her phone rang, the agency manager. She didn't answer. Tears filled her eyes. She had worked too hard, kept her life simple, stayed invisible, and now the whole country knew her name. A knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find a man in a suit, Daniel's driver. "Mr. Smith asked me to bring you to him," he said quietly. "I can't," she whispered. "Please, miss, he insists." Moments later, she found herself back at the mansion she'd cleaned just days ago. The staff stared as she entered. Daniel waited in the study, sleeves rolled, exhaustion shadowing his face. "Shirley," he said, standing, "I owe you an apology." You owe me my life back, she said, voice trembling. You could have picked anyone. Why me? I don't know, he admitted. Maybe because you were the only person in that room who wasn't pretending. She folded her arms, trying to mask her fear. Whatever your reason, you've destroyed my reputation. People are calling me a gold digger. I'll never find work again. I can fix this, he said quickly, but I need your help. Her laugh was bitter. Your help got me into this. Daniel hesitated. If we don't do something, the media will tear both of us apart. They already think we're together, so let's make them believe it. Shirley blinked. What are you saying? Pretend to be my girlfriend, just for a while, until the noise dies down. You're insane. I'll pay you, he said quietly. Enough to clear your father's hospital bills. That froze her. How do you know about that? I asked your agency for your file. Her jaw tightened. You had no right. Maybe not, but I do have the means to make things right. She looked away, anger mixing with despair. You want me to lie again? I want you to survive this, he said. Both of us. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she whispered, How long? 3 months. She exhaled slowly, weighing pride against desperation. Then she nodded once. 3 months, and after that, we never speak again. Daniel met her eyes. Deal. The contract sat between them like a third person. Oscar Reed placed the folder on the desk and tapped the margin where the signatures would go. 3 months, he said, voice level. No interviews without mutual approval, no physical affection unless discussed before a public appearance, no disclosure of personal financial arrangements, payment weekly into the account you provided. He looked at Shirley. And if you want out, there's a clause. You can terminate with 48 hours' notice, but you'll need to return any advance. Shirley read in silence. Her fingers lingered on the paragraph about her father. You included a private medical donation, Daniel nodded. Anonymous, it clears his current bills and covers rehab. She looked up. Thank you doesn't cover what this is, but I'm not going to pretend this is noble. I'm not asking you to, Daniel said. I'm asking you to survive with me. She signed first, each pen stroke a hard line. Daniel followed. Oscar collected the pages and slid them back into the folder. I'll handle the PR brief. First public appearance in 72 hours to retake the narrative. Until then, you both go dark. No comments. When Oscar left, the study felt too big. Daniel poured water for her, but she didn't take it. I need to pack my things, she said. You'll move into the penthouse, he replied. It's easier for logistics. I'm not living in your room, she said. You won't. There's a guest suite, 2 doors down. She nodded once, the smallest concession. Fine, but I work for myself now, not for your mother or anyone else tied to you. That's the idea. The move happened at midnight. With minimal bags and a driver who didn't speak, the penthouse elevators opened into a glass corridor with a view of London stretching to the river. It should have felt impressive. It felt cold. A housekeeper showed her to the guest suite, fresh linens, a wardrobe with tags still on the hangers, a bouquet she didn't want. On the desk lay a simple note in Oscar's neat handwriting. Schedule tomorrow, PR coaching at 9, etiquette at 11, styling at 13, media training at 16. She stared at the list until the words blurred. Morning arrived with a knock. A woman introduced herself as Mira from the PR firm. She carried a stack of tabloids like weapons. You're not going to like this, she said, setting them down. Headlines screamed uncertainty. Photos captured the kiss from 6 angles. Under one, a cropped shot of Shirley's face bore the caption, The Girl Who Caught a King. Shirley pushed the papers away. Teach me what I need to know. They started with posture, then eye lines, then how to pause before answering a question. Silence is not submission, Mira said. It's control. They practiced responses that were truthful without revealing anything. They worked on neutral expressions that didn't look defensive. When it was over, Mira softened. You'll be fine. You read as sincere. At 11, a woman in a navy dress introduced herself as Celeste, etiquette coach. She corrected how Shirley held a glass, how she sat without gripping the chair like it might leave her. None of this is about changing who you are, Celeste said. It's about making strangers less cruel. At 1, the stylist arrived with rails of clothes. The team draped fabrics over her arm and spoke in colors and lines. Shirley chose simple pieces over the louder ones, a black dress that didn't scream, shoes she could walk in. The stylist frowned, then nodded. You're right. The quiet things will speak for you. At 4, media training. A man named Harris ran mock interviews with bright lights and a camera. He was relentless. How long have you been with Daniel? Were you seeing him before the engagement? Are you being paid? She learned to breathe before answering, to turn a question into a boundary. Harris finally lowered the clipboard. Your instinct is to fight, he said. Save it for when it matters. When the door closed, she sat on the edge of the bed and let her shoulders drop for the first time. She didn't hear Daniel enter until he cleared his throat. I brought takeaway, he said, lifting a paper bag. There's a restaurant downstairs that packs everything without fuss. She hesitated, then nodded. They ate in the kitchen, at the end of a long marble island that had never seen a spill. He opened cartons of rice and chicken, and for a while, the silence between them wasn't hostile. He said, Thank you for doing all this. I'm not doing it for you, she said. I'm doing it because I don't want to be torn apart in public. That's fair. Also, she added, your mother told me to get out of your house this morning. He stiffened. When? On my way to PR, she was in the hall. She said, This is a temporary accident. Don't mistake proximity for belonging. He closed his eyes briefly. I'll speak to her. Don't, Shirley said. If I'm going to survive this, it can't be on borrowed courage. He watched her a beat. You keep surprising me. Then maybe you haven't met many people who didn't want something from you. 2 nights later, the first public outing. Oscar rode with them, going over points. Stand together, don't cling. Smile, but not like you're announcing a pregnancy. If someone shouts something crude, don't react. Privately, you can scream in the car. They stepped out under a wash of flashes. The charity gala was in a museum with high ceilings and a hum that swallowed voices. Daniel's hand hovered at Shirley's back without touching. She moved with care, not timid but measured. The dress was black, the shoes practical, the hair a simple wave. A reporter edged forward. Shirley, how did you meet? She held his gaze. At work. Were you seeing each other before the engagement? No. Is this relationship real? She took a breath. We're getting to know each other. The rest is our business. The reporter pushed. Are you being paid? Oscar stepped in. Next question? But the camera caught her face long enough to see the anger she was holding still. Inside the gallery, guests parted as they passed. Some nodded, some whispered. Catherine stood near a sculpture, her smile sharp as glass. She stepped into their path without invitation. Daniel, she said sweetly, what a relief to see you've recovered from your recent madness. Catherine, he said, neutral. Her eyes slid to Shirley. And you must be the moment. Shirley offered a small smile. I'm Shirley. Of course you are, Catherine said. You do realize what happens to girls who wander into rooms like this? They get eaten, not because they're weak, but because they don't understand the rules. Maybe the rules need changing, Shirley said. Catherine didn't blink. They don't, but people do. She leaned closer, voice dropping. Be careful. You're not the first distraction, and you won't be the last. Daniel moved between them. That's enough. Catherine's smile didn't waver. You used to be predictable. I miss that about you. She drifted away, perfume trailing like a threat. Shirley exhaled. She thinks I'm disposable. She thinks everyone is disposable, he said. They made it through speeches, through posed photos arranged by a PR who whispered instructions like choreography. During a lull, Daniel led her to a quieter corner by a window. London moved below like a map. You did well, he said. Better than I expected. That's a low bar, she murmured, but a small grin slipped out. I meant it as a compliment. I know. Music drifted in. A waltz neither of them cared about. He offered a hand. Do you dance? I count, she said. If you can count, you can dance. They moved awkwardly at first, careful not to step on the dress, mindful of eyes. After a minute, he whispered, Left, and she laughed. The first real laugh he'd heard from her. It wasn't loud, it was warm. Across the room, Margaret watched, expression unreadable. Sir Leonard Knight approached her, voice low. Your son is playing a dangerous game. I taught him how, she said, not looking away. I can teach him how to end it. On the ride home, the city softened into dark shapes. Daniel stared out the window. You handled Catherine. She wanted me to flinch. You didn't. I'll wait until I'm somewhere she can't see me, Shirley said. Then I'll shake. He turned. What did you do before agency work? Cafes, offices, cleaning overnight at a hospital, whatever paid on time. What would you do if money wasn't a problem? She almost didn't answer. A small coffee shop with honest prices, real milk, a bell on the door. Nothing clever, just good. He nodded like he was filing it away in a drawer he might open later. When they reached the penthouse, he walked her to the guest suite door, but didn't step inside. Good night, he said. She paused. You know none of this makes us friends. I know, he said quietly. It makes us allies, for now. As she closed the door, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it and stared at the screen until her pulse thudded in her throat. A photo of her leaving her father's ward 6 months ago. The caption, "You don't belong here. Leave while you still can." She saved the number as unknown and turned the phone face down. In the hall, Daniel lingered, listening to the silence, aware of the distance between two doors that felt like an entire city. The next morning, the tabloids softened by a degree. A columnist wrote, "She isn't dazzled. That may be the most dangerous thing about her." PR called to schedule a second appearance, this time at a community fundraiser where cameras would be fewer but questions sharper. Oscar sent a terse text. "Private investigator sniffing around. Assume nothing is private. Be careful what you leave in bins." By midday, a courier delivered a small envelope addressed to Shirley. Inside, a page from a cheap notebook with block letters. "You think he'll choose you over a kingdom? Ask the last girl he fixed." She took the note to Daniel's study and set it on his desk without a word. He read it, jaw flexing. "I'll increase security." "Won't change the fact," she said. "Someone wants me afraid." "Are you?" "Yes," she said. "But fear isn't leaving. I'm not either." He met her eyes, something like respect settling in. "All right," he said. "Then we fight with proof." The following week unfolded like a quiet storm. The scandal had slowed, but the tension between Daniel and Shirley had not. They ate in the same kitchen, crossed the same corridors, and learned how to breathe in each other's space without pretending it didn't matter. Daniel's mother called every morning. He stopped answering. Shirley noticed. One afternoon she found him on the balcony, phone buzzing against the table. "You can't hide forever," she said. "I'm not hiding," he replied, eyes on the skyline. "I'm buying peace." "You can't buy that either," he glanced at her. "You're starting to sound like my therapist." "Maybe you need one." He laughed softly, and she smiled before catching herself. "I'm serious. You carry everything like you're being watched." "I am being watched." He pointed to a drone hovering across the street. "Tabloids still rent lenses that can see through curtains. Don't wave." She didn't. "This isn't living. It's surviving," he said. "That's the deal." Shirley exhaled. "Then you need a better deal." Later that night, he heard her pacing her room. The faint rhythm of her steps echoed through the corridor. When she stopped, he did too, waiting for quiet before walking away. The next morning, Oscar came by with updates. "We've traced the threats to a disposable SIM. Could be Catherine's team, could be someone looking to sell drama." He placed a folder on the table. "You need to be careful and keep her close. Scandal dies faster when you control the picture." Daniel looked toward the guest room door. "She's not a prop, Oscar." "I didn't say she was," Oscar replied evenly. "But the press doesn't care. Give them a different story to chew on. Something human. Something that makes you two look believable." "Like what?" "A photo shoot. Casual, not staged like the gala. Something warm, morning light, coffee cups, the idea that you're actually happy." Shirley entered mid-conversation. "You want to make us look normal?" Oscar offered a small smile. "Exactly. I don't even know what normal looks like anymore." "Then fake it," Daniel said quietly. "We've been doing that since the night we met." The shoot happened at the penthouse terrace 2 days later. A young photographer named Rowan brought natural light and soft patience. He placed them near the window, asked for laughter, then asked for silence. Shirley didn't act. She just looked away when Daniel's eyes stayed on her too long. Afterward, Rowan packed up, leaving behind a single Polaroid. "For you," he said, handing it to Shirley. It captured her mid-laugh, head turned slightly, sunlight brushing her hair. Daniel stood beside her, smiling faintly like he'd forgotten the camera was there. She stared at the picture long after Rowan left. "That doesn't look fake," she murmured. "Maybe it isn't," Daniel said. They didn't speak again that night. By the weekend, the tabloids began shifting tone. "The Billionaire and the Housekeeper, maybe it's real," became a headline. Margaret called again, furious. "Do you know what they're calling you now?" she snapped when he finally answered. "The Scandal Prince. Every article about you undermines our family's credibility." "Our credibility?" he asked. "Or your control? You're throwing away your inheritance over a publicity stunt. I don't care about the money." "Then you're more like your father than I thought," she hissed. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his reflection in the glass door, remembering a man who'd walked out when he was 16, a father who'd said, "When a cage is made of gold, it's still a cage." That night he found Shirley sitting in the kitchen, laptop open to an article about him. "You grew up here?" she asked without looking up. "In this house? No, in boarding schools, hotels, airports. So you've never really lived anywhere?" "I suppose not." "Maybe that's why you don't know what peace feels like." He poured 2 cups of tea and handed her one. "And you? What does peace feel like to you? She thought for a moment. Quiet mornings, coffee that smells like home, knowing no one's waiting to use your name for something. He smiled faintly. I wouldn't know what that's like. She glanced at him. You could learn. The silence between them softened. The next public appearance was a foundation dinner for a children's hospital. Fewer cameras, more sincerity. Shirley greeted guests naturally, listening more than speaking. Daniel watched her laugh with a group of nurses and realized he was no longer pretending to admire her. He was. When they sat for photos, their shoulders brushed. She didn't move away, but as they were leaving, a flash of light exploded, not from a professional photographer, but a phone. Catherine stood near the exit, a faint smirk on her face. Caught again, she said. Daniel clenched his jaw. What do you want? Closure, she replied. And maybe a little entertainment. You humiliated me, Daniel. Did you think I'd just vanish? This isn't about you anymore. Everything's about me when you drag my name into your headlines. She turned to Shirley. You think he's saving you. He's saving himself. Shirley's voice stayed calm. If that's true, it's his burden, not mine. Catherine stepped closer, whispering so only she could hear. He'll leave you the moment this gets boring. Men like him always do. Then she walked away. In the car, Daniel didn't speak until they were halfway home. Don't listen to her. I didn't have to, Shirley said quietly. I've heard that story before. He glanced at her. From who? Every man who thought kindness was a transaction. He didn't answer. That night, she stood on the balcony, cold wind brushing her face. Daniel joined her silently. You're shaking, he said. I'm fine. You don't have to be. I'm still learning what that means, she murmured. He looked at her profile, the city lights painting her outline. You shouldn't have to learn it alone. Her gaze met his, steady, unguarded. Something fragile passed between them, unspoken but real. Before she could speak, the security alarm beeped once. Faint but sharp. They turned. A glass door downstairs had been forced open. Daniel moved fast, grabbing his phone, calling Oscar, checking the cameras. A figure darted through the garden and vanished. Police arrived minutes later, but the intruder was gone. Nothing stolen, just footprints, and a message scratched onto the door with a key. Truth always costs. When the officers left, Shirley stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself. You said we'd survive this, she said softly. We will. You don't believe that, he hesitated. I want to. In the quiet that followed, she reached for his hand. Not out of romance, but out of exhaustion. He let her. By morning, the tabloids had the story. Break-in at Smith residence. Was the housekeeper targeted? Oscar arrived furious. You need to disappear for a few days, both of you. To where? Daniel asked. Brighton. I have a cottage there. No press, no cameras. Shirley crossed her arms. Running solves nothing. It buys time, Oscar replied. You can't fight shadows when you're standing under spotlights. Daniel looked at her. He's right, she exhaled. Then what happens after Brighton? He paused. After that, we decide if this lie still needs to be one. She stared at him, uncertain whether that was a promise or a warning. The car rolled out of London before dawn, headlights cutting through fog that hung low over the motorway. Shirley leaned against the window, eyes on the blur of fields and sleeping towns. Neither she nor Daniel had said much since they'd left. Oscar drove, humming faintly, the rhythm steady enough to feel like safety. After 2 hours, the city noise was gone. The cottage in Brighton sat near the edge of the cliffs, small, whitewashed, facing the restless sea. The sound of waves reached them before they stepped inside. Oscar carried their bags in. No staff, no cameras, he said. Fridge is stocked. Don't contact anyone unless it's me. Shirley looked around the modest living room. Creaky floors, sea breeze through. Open windows, a faint smell of salt and wood. This feels real, she murmured. Daniel smiled faintly. That's because it is. When Oscar left, locking the gate behind him, the silence felt heavier than before. Shirley placed her bag on the sofa. So what now? Daniel shrugged. We wait, rest, try to remember what it's like not to perform. I'm not good at waiting, she said. Then do what you're good at. She shot him a look. Which is? Keeping me honest, he said. That evening they cooked together, or tried to. Daniel had no idea how to use the small gas stove. Shirley laughed for the first time in days when he burned the onions. You run companies but can't run a kitchen, she said, stirring the pan. I hire people who can. You can't hire your way out of being human, she replied. He leaned on the counter, watching her. I'm starting to realize that. Later they sat outside on the porch steps, the wind whipping around them, the ocean dark but alive. Daniel looked at the horizon. When I was 16, my father walked out, he said quietly. He left a note that said, Don't trade freedom for inheritance. I never understood it until recently. Shirley listened, her expression soft. You think he was right? I think he was tired, Daniel said. Tired of being controlled, tired of pretending everything was fine. My mother made his leaving a lesson. Don't be like him, but maybe I should have been. You still can, she said. He looked at her, and for a long moment neither spoke. The next morning, Shirley woke to the smell of coffee. Daniel had found a way to make it work without setting off smoke alarms. He handed her a cup with a grin. Small victories, she smiled. You might survive real life after all. They spent the day walking along the shore. Cameras, tabloids, and polished lies felt miles away. Daniel bought fish and chips from a seaside stall, grease soaking through the paper. Shirley teased him for looking uncomfortable eating with his hands. By afternoon, the clouds thickened, a storm moving in. They hurried back, laughter caught in the wind. Rain hit the windows hard as they got inside, hair damp, shoulders brushing. He reached for a towel and handed her one. Their fingers touched, brief, electric, human. For the first time, there was no contract dictating what that moment meant. She stepped back quickly, wrapping the towel around herself. This doesn't change anything, she said. I didn't say it did, but you're thinking it, he exhaled. I'm thinking I like being here with you, that's all. She hesitated, then turned toward the window. This is temporary. I know. That night, thunder rolled outside. Shirley couldn't sleep. She heard him moving in the next room, pacing. Finally, she stepped into the hall. You're awake, too? He looked up, surprised. Can't turn it off. The noise? The world, he said. She sat opposite him on the couch. The power flickered once, then steadied. You should try talking instead of thinking, she said. About what? Whatever keeps you walking at 2 a.m.? He looked down, rubbing his thumb along his palm. When I kissed you that night, I wasn't trying to save you. I was trying to save myself. She studied him. You think I didn't know that? I didn't know what else to do, he continued. Everyone in that room wanted something from me. Money, control, legacy. You were the only one who didn't even want to be there. I panicked. And I became your excuse, he nodded slowly. Yes. She leaned back, arms crossed. Then maybe we're both fools. I let you turn my life into a headline because I was desperate too. Desperate for what? For hope, she said quietly. For something that wasn't falling apart. The wind outside rattled the windows. He reached out instinctively, covering her hand with his. She didn't pull away this time. He said softly, For what it's worth, I don't regret it. Even after everything it cost? Especially because of it. They sat in silence as the storm passed, leaving the room filled with the sound of the sea. By morning, the world had changed again. Daniel's phone lit up with dozens of notifications, leaked footage, headlines screaming his name. Catherine's voice filled the screen from a press conference. Daniel Smith deceived me and the public. His relationship is a fabrication, a desperate attempt to escape accountability. Shirley read over his shoulder, her face paling. She has recordings? Fake ones, Daniel said. Edited conversations. It looks bad. The phone rang. Oscar. The Knights are suing for defamation, he said. They're using this to push your board to vote you out. I can stall it, but you need a statement. Daniel rubbed his temples. If I speak, it feeds the fire. If I stay silent, they win. Shirley spoke quietly. Then tell the truth. He looked at her. And what is that exactly? That we met by accident, that you were drowning in expectations, that I was stupid enough to believe I could survive your world, and that somewhere in the mess something real happened. You think they'll believe that? Maybe not, she said, but at least it won't be a lie. Oscar's voice came through the line again. Daniel, if you're going to make a statement, do it live. Control the narrative before they bury you. Daniel hung up. We go back to London tonight. Shirley shook her head. You'll be walking into a trap. Then I'll walk in prepared. You don't owe anyone your life, she said. He turned to her. No, but I owe you your name back. The words landed heavier than either of them expected. They packed in silence. Before leaving, Shirley looked once more at the sea. The tide had risen, waves crashing harder, louder, relentless, like the world waiting for them. As they drove back toward the city, she asked quietly, What if this ends badly? Then we end it on our terms, he said, not theirs. She didn't answer, but when the car passed the sign that read, Welcome to London. She reached for his hand, not out of duty, but out of something she no longer had the strength to deny. The city looked different when you came back to it wounded. London's skyline felt colder, the rhythm of traffic sharper. Daniel's car stopped in front of his company's headquarters, a glass tower that gleamed with the same arrogance he once wore easily. Reporters had already gathered outside, microphones raised like bayonets. Oscar met them at the side entrance. "The Knights moved fast," he said. "They've filed an injunction to freeze your shares pending the board's decision. The press conference starts in 40 minutes. If you want to survive this, keep your voice calm and your eyes steady." Daniel nodded. "And Shirley?" "She stays out of sight," Oscar said. "I'm not hiding," Shirley interrupted. "If I disappear, they'll think you admitted guilt." Oscar sighed. "Then you stay behind him and say nothing. Let him lead." Inside, cameras waited. The press room smelled like nerves and coffee. Daniel stepped up to the podium as flashes exploded. Shirley stood a few paces back, face pale but composed. Daniel began. "For the past few weeks, my private life has been dragged into headlines. I take responsibility for the confusion. Yes, the night of my engagement dinner, I acted impulsively. I hurt people, including someone who didn't deserve it," reporters scribbled furiously. "Mr. Smith, are you confirming that your relationship with Ms. Adams was fake?" He paused, looking directly at Shirley. "It started as something unplanned, but it became the only honest thing I've known." Gasps, camera shutters fired like gunshots. "Are you saying you're in love?" another voice shouted. Daniel smiled faintly. "I'm saying I found something real in a world that taught me to fake everything." Margaret entered the room just then, her heels striking marble. She moved straight toward the microphones. "Daniel, enough," she said. Her tone carried command. "You're destroying everything your father built." He faced her calmly. "You mean everything you kept building after he left?" Her face hardened. "You think this woman is worth losing your legacy?" "She's worth finding myself," he said. The crowd murmured. Margaret turned toward Shirley. "And what about you? What exactly do you want from my son?" Shirley swallowed but stood her ground. "Nothing that belongs to you." Margaret studied her for a long second, then looked back at Daniel. "You'll regret this." She left before he could reply. The next day, the story was everywhere. Daniel Smith defies family, admits feelings for Housekeeper. A billionaire's fall or redemption? Some mocked him, others admired him, but the board did not. Within 48 hours, Daniel was asked to step down as CEO. He signed the documents without protest. When he returned home, the penthouse felt quiet, stripped of tension but full of ghosts. Shirley sat on the sofa, watching the evening news replay his resignation. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I did. I made enough money to last a lifetime. What I didn't have was peace." She closed the laptop. "Peace doesn't come from losing everything. Maybe it comes from letting go of everything that was never mine." She stood, moving toward him. "You think walking away fixes the mess? People still believe I trapped you, that I was part of your scheme. Then we show them you weren't. How? By living in a way that proves them wrong." He said it simply, but something in his voice shook her. Over the next few days they tried. They visited her father in the hospital. Daniel stayed quiet while Shirley spoke softly about moving him to a better clinic. Her father watched Daniel carefully, then asked, "You the one who made my daughter famous for the wrong reasons?" Daniel nodded. "I am." The old man's gaze softened. "Then make her proud for the right ones." After they left, Shirley laughed for the first time in weeks. "He likes you. I think he tolerates me. That's better than most people." A week later, Catherine reappeared. She called Daniel privately, offering a truce. "Withdraw your statement," she said over the phone. "Say it was all a misunderstanding. I'll drop the lawsuit, and the board might reconsider." "I can't." "You won't," she corrected. "And when this new thing ends, and it will, you'll realize you traded empires for sympathy?" "Maybe," he said, "but sympathy sleeps better than greed." She laughed bitterly. "You really believe she loves you?" He didn't answer. That night, Shirley stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "Do you ever wonder what happens after the story ends?" she asked. He joined her. "Which story?" "The one people tell about us. Do we vanish when they move on?" "Maybe that's the point," he said. "To be forgotten by everyone but each other." She turned to him then, and he saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not fear, not anger, just truth. He reached out slowly. She didn't move away. The kiss came like a sigh, soft, certain, real. It wasn't a performance, it wasn't rescue, it was release. They pulled apart, both breathless, both quiet. Shirley whispered, "What happens now?" He smiled faintly. "Now we see if love works without scripts." Over the next month, they disappeared from the tabloids' front pages. The city found new scandals. Margaret retreated from public life. Catherine's lawsuit lost traction once evidence of her forged recordings surfaced. Daniel spent mornings at the hospital, overseeing Shirley's father's transfer to a rehabilitation center. He started volunteering at the children's foundation he'd once only donated to. Reporters tried to photograph him, but he stopped posing. One evening he came home with paint on his shirt. Shirley raised an eyebrow. "You redecorating?" He grinned. "I was helping a community center fix a wall." "Daniel Smith, the man with a paintbrush," she teased. "The world truly is ending." "It might be beginning," he said. She looked around the penthouse, still too big, too quiet. "This doesn't suit who you're becoming." "I was thinking the same," he said. "There's a small place in Brighton, near that cottage. I'm buying it." "For you?" "For us," he said, testing the word. "If you want," her breath caught. "You don't need to." "I know, I want to." They drove there the following weekend. The cottage had been repaired, brighter now, with a small coffee shop next door for sale. Shirley stood at the doorway, reading the faded sign, "For lease, Seaview Cafe." Daniel handed her a key. "Call it a coincidence," he said. She turned to him, emotion tightening her voice. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he said. They stood there as the wind swept off the sea, two people who had lost everything that didn't matter to find the one thing that did. Inside, the air smelled of salt and promise. Shirley walked behind the counter, fingertips tracing the wooden surface. "It's small," she said. "It's perfect." He moved closer. "You told me once peace was a quiet morning and real coffee," she smiled. "You listened. Always." He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Welcome home." The cafe opened 6 months later under the name Harbor Light. The morning sun filled the small space with gold. Daniel arrived early, sleeves rolled, helping Shirley set out tables. Locals stopped by, curious at first, then loyal. They liked the coffee, the quiet, the way Shirley smiled like she'd been waiting all her life to greet them. Daniel poured milk into a cup and made a face. "Still can't get the ratio right?" Shirley laughed softly. "You're improving. You only ruin half the drinks now." He wiped his hands and leaned on the counter. "Progress." Outside, the waves were calm, the town still waking. For the first time, they didn't have anywhere else to be. No cameras, no board meetings, no headlines. Just the rhythm of small days. One afternoon, Margaret appeared at the door. The bell chimed, and Shirley froze mid-motion. Daniel looked up from the register, the years of conflict between them thick in the air. His mother stepped inside, dressed simply for once. No diamonds, no entourage. "So it's true," she said quietly. "You're making coffee now." "Among other things," Daniel said. Margaret glanced around the cafe, the photos on the wall, the handwritten menu, the warmth. "You look happy." "I am," she met Shirley's eyes. "And you?" "I'm learning to breathe again," Shirley said carefully. Margaret nodded once. "I came to apologize, not for the business that was mine to lose, but for thinking love had to fit inside a contract," Daniel softened. "That's new for you." "I'm old enough to learn," she replied. "I wanted control. You wanted peace. Maybe we were both wrong about what either meant." She hesitated, voice lower. "Your father would have liked this place." He smiled faintly. "That means more than you think." Margaret turned to go, then paused at the door. "You were right about her," she said. "She's the first thing about you that feels real." And then she was gone. Shirley exhaled slowly, eyes glistening. "That sounded like acceptance. Or surrender," Daniel said softly. "Either way, I'll take it." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The cafe flourished quietly. Daniel managed deliveries, sometimes helped a kid with homework at the back table. Shirley handled the front, remembering names, stories, favorite pastries. Their world shrank and deepened at once. Sometimes at sunset they'd close early and walk along the shore. She'd slip her hand into his and listen to the sea, the same sea that had witnessed every storm between them. But peace, even earned, doesn't mean perfection. One evening, a reporter showed up unannounced, young and nervous, holding a camera bag. "Mr. Smith," he said, "I'm doing a piece on life after wealth. Can I ask you one question?" Daniel sighed but nodded. "Make it one." "Do you miss it? The money, the attention, the world you left behind?" Daniel looked at Shirley, then at the quiet street. "No," he said simply. "I miss nothing that ever made me forget who I am." The reporter smiled awkwardly. "That's surprisingly honest." "It's all I have left to be," Daniel replied. The man thanked him and left. Shirley watched him go. "You realize that quote will be everywhere tomorrow." "Let them print it," Daniel said. "It won't hurt anymore." That night, rain began to fall. Not dramatic, just steady. Shirley stood by the window, watching it bead down the glass. Daniel came up behind her, arms wrapping around her shoulders. Do you ever think about how we got here? She asked. Every day, he said. And I still don't know if it was luck or punishment. Maybe both. He smiled against her hair. If it was punishment, I'd take it again. She turned to face him. You're not the same man who kissed me in front of that crowd. I hope not. You're better, she said. He kissed her softly, and for a moment the past didn't matter. Not the scandals, not the losses, not the noise. Only the quiet truth between them. Weeks later, a letter arrived. The board of Smith & Co. wanted Daniel to return to serve as consultant. The company had lost direction without him. He read it over breakfast, expression unreadable. What will you do? Shirley asked. He folded the letter. Decline. The man they want doesn't exist anymore, she smiled. Then what does the man you are want? This, he said simply, gesturing to the cafe, the sea, to her. All of this. He placed the letter in a drawer and never mentioned it again. Months passed, and Harbour Light became more than a cafe. It became a refuge. People came not just for coffee but for calm. Some recognized Daniel, most didn't. He preferred it that way. One morning as Shirley wiped the counter, she caught him watching her. What? She asked, smiling. He shook his head. Just remembering how it started. One kiss, one lie. She laughed. And now? Now everything's true. The bell above the door rang again. 2 tourists entered, ordering coffee and chatting about the view. Shirley took their order while Daniel prepared the cups. The routine was simple, almost sacred. When the tourists left, Daniel wrote something on a napkin and slid it across the counter. She picked it up. It read, "Marry me." Her breath caught. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious." She stared at him, the man who had once been chaos and charm, now standing there with flour on his hands and a grin that felt like sunrise. "You don't even have a ring." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver band, plain, unpolished. "It's from a hardware shop. Fits my life better." She laughed through tears. "You're impossible." "I'm yours," he said. "That's worse." She leaned across the counter and kissed him. "Then yes," she whispered. "But no cameras, no headlines, no grand gestures, just us." "Just us," he promised. They married quietly 2 weeks later, a local registrar, a handful of neighbors, her father smiling in the front row. No suits, no gowns, just warmth. When they signed the papers, Shirley looked at Daniel and whispered, "You realize you're officially my boss again." "Not this time," he said. "We're partners now." After the ceremony, they walked back to the cafe. The sun dipped low, painting the sea gold. Daniel flipped the sign to closed, then sat with her on the steps, watching the horizon. He said, "If someone had told me that the biggest mistake of my life would lead me here, I'd have laughed in their face." She smiled. "Some mistakes are just miracles in disguise." They sat there until the light faded, the sound of waves carrying. The quiet promise of peace that had taken them so long to earn.